Good afternoon, and thanks very much for being here. I want to recognize my partners in government who have joined us, including Assemblyman Mark Johns, Supervisor Tony LaFountain, and from the Penfield Town Board, Andy Moore and Linda Kohl. Governing is a team sport, and I certainly appreciate their partnership on this issue and many others that impact residents here in Penfield. First, a little background on this issue. In 2015, the New York State Court of Appeals ruled in a case called the People v. D Act to overturn a Nassau County law that prohibited all registered sex offenders from residing within 1,000 feet of a school. In its decision, the Court of Appeals reasoned that the county's local law was preempted by state law and therefore could not stand. The underlying basis for that reasoning was that by including all Class 1, 2, and 3 sex offenders in the restriction, the Nassau County law exceeded the scope of existing state statute, which currently restricts only some sex offenders from living within 1,000 feet of a school. Well, that decision had a wide-ranging effect for communities across the state, including many with stricter residency restrictions already on the books, but none were impacted any more than the town of Penfield. Under the leadership of Supervisor LaFountain, the town was on the brink of enacting an important Child Safety Act. The court's decision set a dangerous precedent that handcuffed communities like Penfield from enacting restrictions which simply made sense for their community and for their neighborhoods and for their families. Supervisor LaFountain will explain the Penfield Child Safety Act in just a minute, but it is safe to say that any time a sex offender can reside within 200 feet of where hundreds of Penfield Little Leaguers play baseball every year, then the system is broken. The town simply wanted to enact a law to protect its kids, but it was told that it couldn't. So I reached out to Supervisor LaFountain at that time to offer our assistance and to ask in how we could help in developing a solution. With the town's input, my office drafted and introduced legislation in the Senate in 2015 that would correct this problem for Penfield and communities like it across the state. Unfortunately, despite being passed with bipartisan support in the Senate the past 2 years in a row, our proposal has not been passed in the Assembly and has not been signed by the governor, meaning the wide-ranging, precedent-setting impact of that 2015 court decision remains unaddressed and some families remain unprotected. So today I'm happy to announce the Senate on Monday again passed our legislation to give control of local sex offender residency restrictions back to communities like Penfield so they can act to better protect our kids. And I am grateful today that Assemblyman Mark Johns will be introducing this legislation in the Assembly. But now we need the Assembly majority and the governor to do their part to clear the way for the Child Safety Act in Penfield and for similar laws in other parts of New York State. The purpose of this legislation is simple. In fact, it has only two parts. The first part of this law clarifies existing state law to make it crystal clear that the legislature intends to allow local communities to make this decision for themselves. The second explicitly gives municipalities the authority to enact local laws restricting where registered sex offenders can live. For the town of Penfield, adoption of our legislation would mean the Child Safety Act can move forward without court interference. More importantly, it means Penfield parents can sleep a little bit easier at night knowing the town has done everything in their power to keep our families safe. To me, this bill is about local control. And I do think that sometimes the state of New York needs to step aside and allow communities to do what they do best. And what they do best is to make decisions that best address local needs. No two kids are the same. No two communities are the same. And that means no two solutions to keep our children safe will ever be the same. Here's the bottom line. To best protect our kids, communities on a local level need to have a say. Our legislation would give communities like Penfield that voice, and we are here today to call on the Assembly and the governor to get it done this year. So I want to thank Supervisor LaFountain and the entire Penfield board for their leadership on this issue, including Deputy Supervisor Linda Kohl and also Councilman Andy Moore. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Assemblyman Mark Johns to say a few words on this piece of legislation. Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assemblyman Mark Johns, It's an honor and privilege to represent Penfield as part of my 135th Assembly District. This here to let you know that when this bill came to my attention, Senator Funke and the Senate did what they should have done, passed this piece of legislation. I'm introducing it in the Assembly and will help to push and shepherd it through, hopefully before the end of session this June. And I just want to introduce right now Supervisor Tony LaFountain. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I'm thankful for Senator Funke's ongoing efforts to support the Penfield community and families of the state of New York. With the recent passage of Senate Bill 2178 that explicitly gives municipalities the authority to enact a local law to establish residency restrictions for sex offenders. Now that the Senate has passed this bill, it is critical and I want to repeat critical that the Assembly take the next step and pass it as well and bring it to the governor's office for his signature. We thank Assemblyman Mark Johns for his sponsorship of this, and once this legislation has made its way through Albany, the next step will be that the Penfield Town Board will adopt the local law known as the Penfield Child Safety Act. So once again, thank you very much to Senator Funke and Assemblyman Mark Johns for their support.